Good morning, and welcome to the annual Dean Society call. We will wait for a few more people to join and we'll begin shortly. As we wait, I'd like to share with you what you can expect during the call. This call is being recorded, and the annual fund team will make the recording available to you afterwards. All participants will be muted during the conversation between myself and Dean Rajan. If you have issues with audio, you may want to shut down programs opening in the background or dial in from your telephone. We'll wait a few more minutes. Thanks for joining us this morning. Good morning and welcome. My name is Dennis Zhu, and I will be your moderator for today's event. Like you, I'm also a Dean Society donor, as well as a sponsor of the 125th Anniversary Challenge. And I'm glad to have you with us for today on this exclusive call with Dean Rajan. The Dean's Society at Chicago booth recognizes donors who contribute $2,500 or more on a yearly basis to one of the annual funds at the business school at the University of Chicago. As a Dean's Society donor, you represent the top 10% of all donors to Chicago booth and are key leaders in the school's ongoing success with your investments of time and resources, which are critical to advancing the work of the school. On behalf of the school, thank you for all that you do for Chicago booth. The presentation will last for 45 minutes today. I will moderate a conversation with Dean Rajan, and then we should have 15 to 20 minutes to answer questions that were submitted by you prior to the event. In addition, if you would like to submit a question during the time, please use the Q&A box below. Questions and comments are welcome during the conversation. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Dean Rajan, the George Pratt Schultz Professor of Accounting and Dean at Chicago booth since July 2017. Dean Rajan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dennis. Thanks everyone for being on this call today. It's great to see so many people tuning in the morning in Chicago. I wanted to just start by saying how grateful I am on behalf of the school for all the investments that you make into Chicago booth. I would say as a school, we've built up significant momentum over the past few years, and that's largely due to our outstanding faculty, staff, and students. But I think an equal amount of credit, if not more, goes to our exceptional alumni community, a global alumni community, which now has more than 58,000 alumni in over 120 countries. I thought I'd provide a brief update to the school before we dive into the questions that you send and any others that you might want to ask me now. So this has been a very important year for the school. We've been celebrating our 125th anniversary starting in January, 1st of January, and we've had lots of great highlights for the school along the way. We've had lots of high impact events that we have held to celebrate the 125th, including the special 125th celebration at Wrigley Field in Chicago in spring. So we've been doing events starting, as I said, in New York in the beginning of the year, did a bunch of events in the South. We did Palm Beach, Miami, Austin, and then we did some events. We did one in LA. I just came back from an event this past week in Dallas where I did a fireside chat with David Booth. And part of it was to celebrate actually the a profound impact of the historic investment that David made, which was exactly 15 years ago. He said that was done in the fall of 2008. So we used this as an occasion to celebrate that. These events will continue for a bit more. I'll be in Hong Kong in a couple of weeks to do a celebration of our 125th there. I think Anil Kashyap is doing a 125th event in London. So we're looking forward to a really great culmination to what's been a great year. So in July, one of the big new things we announced was the launch of a new one-year master's program, Master in Management, which for us as a school was a very monumental change. We've only ever done the PhD degree, which we started about 100 plus years ago, 102. And then the MBA, which was 88 years ago. And so this will be the first new degree program that we have offered at Chicago Booth in 88 years. So it's a really important day for us, and we'll start it next year. And the goal is to bring foundational management skills to college graduates, very ambitious grads from whether it's liberal arts or STEM sort of undergrad backgrounds. And we would like for you to help us in figuring out the right applicants to the program. And on the other side, right, figuring out what might be good venues for them to take jobs after they've completed this one-year master's. So we have actually like an email address. It's just masters@chicagobooth.edu. And you should feel free to email that with referrals you have or students you feel like you want to recommend to it, any of that. Again, it's masters@chicagobooth.edu. Dennis mentioned that about the 125th challenge, and this is something that's been just a spectacular success, and I'm very, very grateful to all of you for your generosity. We had 25 alumni leaders who donated $125,000 to this 125th anniversary challenge. And their commitments will match one-to-one all gifts in this year, calendar year, of $2,500 and more. And we're about 70% of the way toward meeting the challenge. And we've had more than 200 alumni give at this level, which is pretty extraordinary. And these benefit the annual fund, which is the critical fund that we use to do ongoing, important new programs or ongoing things where we're trying to take it into a new trajectory. So anything where we need flexibility in some investments, the annual fund is the place where we draw those resources from. So I'm very, very grateful to you for contributing you to that. Again, thanks, Dennis. Thanks to all of you for all that you have done. And our fiscal year runs July through June. So as the end of June of this year, we closed the books on the prior fiscal year, and we had a record-breaking total for the annual fund of close to $13.5 million, I think slightly above that, which was fantastic. And we also had several gifts during the year that were transformative to benefit our programs and particularly our centers. So if you look at the centers at Booth, we had a gift last fall to name the Center for Applied Artificial Intelligence, although that donor has chosen to remain anonymous. We had a gift from Manny Roman, the CEO of PIMCO, to name the Center for Decision Research, which is actually the longest running center at the school. So it was wonderful to finally have that name. And then we named our initiative for global markets was named the Kent Clark Center for Global Markets, thanks to a lot of his friends and colleagues from Goldman Sachs who enabled that. And then, of course, we announced the gift in, I guess, late April, early May, to name the doctoral program. So Ross Stevens, who was a PhD alum, student of Gene Pharma, gave a $100 million gift to name the program. And this is pretty groundbreaking. We don't really have all the records, but we couldn't really find any other gift like that for any PhD program at any institution. So it's pretty amazing. As a school, the faculty continue to be one of the core assets we invest in, right? We were at 135 tenure line faculty just a few years ago. We're at about 145 now, which is actually a bit lower than we have been. And some of it is simply because we've had this year, the university put in a new retirement system, sort of like an incentive plan, if you will. And we've had 8 faculty who took that. So despite that, we're still at about 145 faculty. So we've kind of come up significantly. and the caliber of the faculty across the board continues to be just spectacular. So, last fall, and I mentioned this because yesterday, the Nobel Prize was announced to Claudia Golden, who actually is a Chicago PhD. Last year, Doug Diamond on our faculty won the Nobel Prize in economics, making it 10, the number of Booth faculty who won Nobels. And we have 4 active, winners on our faculty right now, which is a pretty astonishing accomplishment for a business school. On the student side, things continue to go well. We have, this month ago, we brought in 658 students, which is the highest number we've ever had. And I can sort of explain part of the reasons for that as we go through our questions. And for those of you who care about those things and follow the rankings and stuff, for the second straight year, our full-time program was ranked #1. And this year, we were ranked #1 for the first time ever, just on our own. We were tied last year. And I don't particularly pay that much attention to these rankings. I think the only thing I will say is that it's a good validation because the metrics for these rankings keep changing year to year, as you know, particularly US News. And the fact that despite a very different evaluation, we still managed to come on top, I think just says a lot about the strengths of the school. So what are the things that I'm thinking about? I mean, like I said, we've had a really big year. As we reflect on sort of the school's role in what it's done over the past 125 years, I think we should all be very proud of what the school has done. And our goal going forward is to sort of broaden and deepen our impact in newer areas. I think launching the new Masters in Management is going to be a big one, and other things, other programs like that we have in mind. We started a healthcare initiative a couple of years ago, led by Matt Noto and Dan Edelman, and that's doing really well. So, carrying forward that momentum and eventually perhaps making that a center would be fantastic. We're making a big series of investments in artificial intelligence at the school, and I think figuring out the right ways to do it and carry it forward is going to be important. And also increasing scholarship opportunities across all our MBA programs. As you know, a few years ago, we started offering scholarships across the board, not just in the full-time, which is where we had historically done it, but also in the part-time and even the EMBA. And I think finding ways to support that, both merit-based and need-based scholarships, again, which we hadn't done before, I think is going to be important. So let me just wrap up by saying how much I appreciate your incredible support of the school over the past year. It's really, it's hard to overstate, we could not do any of the things we do without the help and support that you have given, and the fact that you allow us to do it in a very flexible way, so that we can optimize for the school and make it even greater going forward. So just want to say thank you, not just for the philanthropy, which many of you practice, but also for all the other ways in which you give in terms of your time, your guest lecturing, at the school, your mentoring of our students, participating as a judge in many of the competitions that we run, recommending great students, hiring our graduates. So there are lots and lots of ways that you can and do help us. Just want to say how thankful I am to all of you for doing that. Thank you.
Dean Rajan, let me pick one question from this list of the questions that were submitted. The first one is, you have covered quite a bit about updates, affairs of the school, but this is maybe a bit premature in a way. The AI you mentioned,
sure,
and climate change, risks management, maybe you can share with us your thoughts and how do we deal with it at the school, what values we can add to the students' education to prepare them for a new age that we don't really quite know that much about yet.
Yeah, it's a great point. So let me speak a little bit about the AI first. So I think that it's clear that artificial intelligence is going to be a huge, part of everything that happens going forward. Kind of in a way that the, internet and the technology boom has sort of changed every industry. One of the great assets we have as a school is that we've always been a great school in thinking about data. I've said this many times. I think it's a misnomer that people consider Chicago Booth a finance school. Chicago Booth is a data school. We became good at finance simply because we figured out how to gather data and use it in finance before anybody else did. And so I would actually put a lot of the school's greatness and the momentum it had going back to the 1960s to the fact that CRISP was set up and the first ever financial database was set up at Chicago Booth. So to me, we've always been a great data school. And then when I came to Chicago as a dean, I came from outside. My impression of Chicago from outside had always been that this was a school that was the best in the world at looking at empirical work, at data, how to use it, how to analyze it, how to use it for decision making. So in many ways, the way the school has been structured now is all about data applied to different disciplines. We have a great marketing group because we have great marketing faculty who think about big data and how it can be used in marketing applications, right? We do a lot on big data and how it applies to healthcare, for example, or to finance. And so the artificial intelligence focus comes relatively naturally to us as a school. So we've been teaching classes in AI for the last couple of years, 3-4 years that Sendhil has been teaching. We have classes on machine learning at Booth. We have classes on app development at Booth. We have a new business analytics concentration we put in just 3 years ago. So very much as a school, we've been moving to this frontier very, very quickly because our faculty are at that frontier, and that's been a huge help for us. So in terms of AI investments, I would break it into two things, Dennis. One is investing in the right faculty. One of the interesting things about AI is that unlike a finance or accounting, where you have a finance PhD or accounting PhD and you get hired into that discipline, with AI, you could be in a computer science program, right? And you're applying AI to solve business problems. So we're thinking as a school about how do we hire these people who are actually interdisciplinary from the beginning? How do we set up, how do we mentor them? How do we bring them up for tenure? So we actually set up a faculty committee a few months ago to look at that problem. And they're now doing a national search for applied AI researchers who could be in any of these disciplines and bringing them in. So we're doing a good job on that. The second step is how do you provide the research infrastructure for these people? It turns out it's relatively expensive to provide the infrastructure, the GPUs, as they call it, that these people need to do the research. So we've been working a lot on thinking about how do we provide resources for each faculty? Do we do it at the school level, at the university level? How do we make these investments in the machinery and the compute power that these people need to do the research that they're doing? So we have another faculty group that's working on that problem. So I think on the AI stuff, we recognize the importance. We're at the frontier, Dennis, and I'm very, very proud of that. In fact, I think we are teaching right now the first ever class anywhere on generative AI. So Sanjog Mishra on our faculty, again, he's in marketing, but he's an expert in applied AI. He's teaching a class on generative AI. So I think that's super exciting. On the climate change, the sort of sustainability model, the Rustandi Center for Social Sector Innovation has long been very involved in that. And again, the great thing at Booth is that we approach a problem like that from many different angles. So Christian Leutz, who's an accounting faculty member, is actually teaching a class on how do you disclose environmental liabilities as a company and how do you optimize around them. We have classes on impact investing being taught by the Rustandi Center. So we're approaching this, again, very Chicago fashion, very data-driven, very empirical, and in many different ways so that our students get full understanding and exposure to all of these areas. So we view these as critical. And I would say I'm very proud of how quickly the school has been moving to the frontier in all of these areas, Dennis.
Thank you. Thank you. There is further curiosity about these new program Master of Management. Can you share with us a bit more about because it will be probably a challenge for you to get to expand the faculty and take care of a lot of the other details. So can you share with us a bit more about that program?
Yeah, so the initiative behind it, right? If you think about it, we have an executive MBA program, we have an MBA program. And what we have realized is for those programs, the key requirement that we're going to ask for is that students have had full-time work experience of at least 2 years, right? The median student comes into the MBA with actually 5 years of experience, but 2 is the minimum that we require. Now, the big thing we started doing 4 years ago, which we had never done, was to start teaching undergraduates. So in 2019, we put together a new undergrad degree with the economics department, the business economics track at the college. Now, this has been a wild success, right? Way beyond anything we could have ever anticipated. It is now the #1 major at the University of Chicago. That's something I'm very proud of. And I think, people always ask me, what will sort of be the biggest thing you've done? I think by far when I leave, that'll be the biggest thing that will have changed. In 4 years, we've created the top major at the university, right? Now, so we've been spending time, Dennis, teaching undergrads who have no work experience. So the way I think about this new 1-year Master of Management is that it just slots right in the middle of those two. You have the MBAs with at least 2 years of work experience or more. You have the undergrads with no work experience. And I think of the Master in Management as also students without full-time work experience, right? That'll be the model student. Why is that different from what we've been doing? Well, right now we're teaching this business economics undergrad degree, but I'm thinking of somebody who is majoring in English or who's majoring in physics or engineering, have never taken a business class, but before they take their first job, they want to get exposure to it. So I view the 1-year Master in Management almost as like a tilt or a layer on top of an existing undergrad degree they've done in some other field that they do before they leave and take their first job. So either you do the undergrad at Chicago, the business economics, or you major in something completely different, liberal arts, humanities, whatever, and then you port the 1-year master on top of it, and or then sort of going out and getting a regular job. So I view the graduates of the Master in Management program as being very similar to somebody who comes to Chicago to do business economics, or who might go to a Wharton or a Berkeley Haas or a school like that. That's the way I'm thinking about it. So it's a good fit for us. It's an area, a group of students we've already know how to teach. And you raised a great question about faculty. Well, we're doing a lot of faculty teaching at the undergrad level. And my goal would be to take some of those faculty and have them start teaching the master's program. So I think faculty supply is not that big of an issue for us because we've been using a lot of faculty supply to teach the undergrad classes, that we can divert a portion of that now to the master's program. So that's the sort of the vision of the program. But all that said, right, it's a new program. We've never done it. And, we've given ourselves a year to get applicants and bring them in, and it's going to be a trial and error. One proof of concept, if you will, that I would say is that the Master in Management is a very popular degree outside the US. If you go to Asia, right, if you go to Europe, actually in Europe, the Master of Management probably is more popular than the MBA, right? Most students in Europe don't come to the US anymore to do a 2-year MBA. They would rather stay in Europe, they go to an INSEAD or London Business School and do the 1-year degree. So in many ways, I think this is actually going to attract students for us from continental Europe who don't want to come and do the 2-year MBA later in their career, but are very interested in finishing an undergrad in Europe and then coming to the US for 1 year to get a 1-year experience. So I'm hopeful that this will be successful, and that if it is, we'll also try other types of masters along the way.
Thank you, Dean Rajan. I certainly remember the first time I met with you when you took the job. I think your passion, conviction, a lot of the alums are extremely impressed with, and you've already made great impact. Can you share with us a bit, maybe a snapshot, rough picture of what is the placement like for graduating students now at Booth, since we've got this great ranking every year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually been very interesting. I mean, we do really well in the rankings in part because our students get great jobs too, right? Which are a big factor in these rankings. I think the change that has happened in our career placement over the past 10, 15, 20 years has been that we used to send a lot of students to finance, right? To banking and that those sorts of fields. Um, we're still very strong in finance, but within finance, where we send students is now very different. A lot of the students go into jobs in private equity, some to venture capital, some to asset management, and relatively few go to sort of the jobs that they would have taken 20 years ago. So finance is still popular, but within that, the kind of job students want is different. Uh, Consulting is still very, very popular for our students. I think more than 1/3 of our students end up taking jobs in consulting. I think last year, McKinsey and BCG together, I think hired like 18 or 20% of our students, some crazy number like that. So the top consulting firms really are very attracted to our students. Now, to be fair, those students don't stay in those jobs for a very, very long time, but it's a great first point for them to leave Booth and get into. They spend 2 or 3 years there, get great experience. They pay off their student loans, and then they're able to figure out which industry do they like and sort of move into that sort of specific industry 2, 3 years out there. So that's working well. The big change we have seen, Dennis, is that technology has become another big employer for our students, particularly because as a school, we are so good at the data side on the analytics and explaining that the frontier of it. A lot of students end up taking jobs as product managers or product marketing type roles in the big tech companies. So this has been a big change for us, and I'm very happy with it because it's really diversified our employer base, right? Back in the day, it was all, finance, and a particular type of finance, but now we have much broader finance, consulting, and we have broad tech. So those are sort of the three big pillars that our students go into. Now, entrepreneurship as a field of study has become popular at Booth, but relatively few students leave Booth and go directly into starting their own company, right? If they go, to work, it'll be for a tech company, either a big one or a startup, but relatively few start a company right out. Similarly, even though a lot of students take classes in social entrepreneurship, relatively few are starting their own company, but these are things that our students want to do later, right? So in that sense, right, they're very thoughtful about their career planning. One of the big changes we've seen in employment, Dennis, is that very few of our students stay in the same job for too long, right? I think unlike the old days where, you wanted to get a job and you'd be there 10, 15 years, our students turn jobs over very quickly, which I'm sure all of you have noticed. So they really want to set themselves up for the long term. And their notion is, look, 7, 10 years from now, I want to be able to start my own company. So I want to get prepared for that now. Similarly, I want to leave Booth and learn how to get into a nonprofit board at some point, right? Or I want to think about doing sort of some charitable, things on my own. And so the students are really now taking classes to set themselves up for their career, as opposed to what's the next job that I'm going to take, because they know whatever the job is, they're going to be out of it in like 2 years. So that's become the more of the model, is investing in themselves for the long term, as opposed to how do I get that first job for me?
Thank you. Well, there's a follow-on question on that. Since our graduating students get a great job, and then after a few years they take various senior leadership jobs, is there anything at the school to support some of the alums in terms of offering and the board seats or advisory roles of these public and private companies? What are your thoughts? I understand a lot of these things are very difficult. Great ideas, but very difficult and dangerous in terms of execution.
Yeah, for us to it's a good question, but I agree with you, Dennis. I mean, for us to get involved in a for-profit company deciding whom to put on their board, right? That seems to me very like deviating from our core mission. quite a bit. And so the only place where we do things is on the nonprofit side, right? The Rustandi Center actually, particularly in Chicago, we do a lot with connecting alumni to nonprofits that could use their help to be on the board. So the Board Connect works really well locally. And I think we've also done some of it online for people in different cities. So on the nonprofit side, yes, we do a lot to match, what the nonprofits are looking for and alumni who would be good on the board. We don't really do it on the for-profit side, right? Because, for a lot of our alums who go into PE or VC type work, part of their investment is they serve on the boards of a lot of these companies. And the skills and experience they're looking for is very specialized. So we haven't really come up with programs in the area where we act as a clearinghouse. And it just, I think the information gap between what we would be able to say and, you know what I mean? It seems like a field where you have specialized search firms that they do that really well. I don't know that we have a core competence. Yeah. I don't know that we could break into that or if that would even fit into our mission in a direct way, right? Certainly, we do a lot to help, alumni career aspirations in many ways. For-profit board service seems to be a difficult one for us to kind of break into.
It's the next one I'm going to pick is an ancient and a bit tricky question. I've heard it quite a bit when I was even a student there. What are your thoughts about our students at booth customers or products? And there's a comment. There's probably a bit of a gap that professors view them as products and the students view themselves as customers. What is your comment? I remember we spent quite a bit of the time dealing with all the stuff when maybe
I think it's a great question. I think the question is framed exactly correctly. I think that the school certainly views students as the product, right? I think eventually we view our job as sort of developing students' talent so that they can be productive in society. And eventually, we're going to be judged as a school based on how well the students do in society. In many ways, it's not just, do you make a lot of money? I mean, that's certainly one dimension, but have you contributed in other ways to society, right? Have you built a great not-for-profit? Have you done things to change people's lives? And so that's what we view our role as. Like, we're here to shape future leaders, right? That is a clear part of our mission. We have the production side of our mission, which is to produce knowledge with enduring impact. But the second side is to disseminate the knowledge to create current and future leaders, right? And that's what we think we do as a school. So I'm more partial to the notion that, look, eventually this is a product that we are creating for the betterment of society. And that's how we'll be judged, right? If we are producing the right products and they do well, other students are more interested in then coming and being a part of the organization. Students aren't really customers in that they can come and pick and choose what they do, because we feel as a school, what we're providing is knowledge and training and eventually certification to the outside world that we feel this particular person has sort of, gone through a certain amount of training that's going to help them. So in that sense, I'm more partial to the product view, not the customer view.
Thank you. And there's probably a bit of a technical question beyond the school, but it's somewhat related. The U.S. immigration policy about foreign students working in the United States. Do you have any information or update or hope?
Yeah, I think one of the things that happened during COVID is that our programs were all certified as STEM degrees. I mean, the entire MBA. And I think that's been very helpful. So that changes the amount of, the students sort of OPT, practical training and stuff like that. And so anybody who does an MBA gets 3 years of sort of, automatic work experience in the US. And I think that's been very important for foreign students to have that guarantee. I know that there were some legal questions about OPT, but I think those were all resolved just actually a few months ago. So that's a big program for us, right? And I think the fact that foreign students come, they know that they have a guaranteed 3 years they can work in the US. And particularly if you're coming from a country where the currency is not, valued as high, you know that you can work in the US, try to make up that money. So I think it's a really big plus for us in terms of being able to attract foreign students. And, the immigration policies have a huge impact on the school because, if you go back even like 4 or 5 years ago, we had this massive decline in the number of international students who were willing to come because students were worried about the trends in the how the government was thinking about foreign students. Thankfully, that's changed now. And I think people recognize the value that there is to bringing them in. I think, like most people who study these things, I would say that as a country, one of the great advantages the US has is in being able to attract foreign talent, right? We have the best graduate schools in the world. And I think it would be a good idea to figure out how to retain the best high talent workers who come through our great institutions. So the more we can do on that, Dennis, I think is absolutely good. The current rule certainly is better than what we've had before. And I think it enables students to at least have multiple years of work experience, even if eventually they decide to go back. But that's sort of where we are.
Thank you. Can you talk a bit about the healthcare initiative at the school?
So this has been a big new thing we started doing 2 years ago. And the catalyst was that Matt Noto, who had been a faculty member at Booth many years ago, went to Northwestern Economics. They gave him tenure very early. He's a big star. And we were able to recruit Matt back to Booth. So we have Matt, who is a healthcare economist. I think his book is actually coming out just in January or February on healthcare economics, which is going to be fantastic. And we paired him with Dan Edelman, who is on our operations faculty. He does a lot of work with the hospital at UChicago. And they combined wanted to create this initiative. Obviously, healthcare, massive part of GDP, right? Close to 1/5 of the US GDP. A lot of students are interested in going into that space. And we wanted the initiative to come up with a set of courses that students could take, industry connections, jobs that students could take, better connections to UChicago medicine to scale the joint MD, MBA degree. So there are many aspects around it. We have restarted our healthcare concentration, which is something the school did 20, 30 years ago, but had become defunct. So we have now have a healthcare concentration again at Booth. We are starting a new joint degree, an MBA and an MS in biomedical sciences next year. So people can start applying for it right now. We're doing a bunch of new courses in healthcare. And we have a lot of alumni in the healthcare space, Dennis, who have agreed to come and serve on the advisory board of this healthcare initiative to think about what is it that current students need to know so that they get the right jobs in the healthcare industry and so that they'll be successful going forward in the healthcare industry. So as I said, it's a massive part of the US economy, and we're very, very thrilled that we have this sort of momentum to do more. There was a big news article about our efforts in this just about a month ago. It's gratifying to see people have recognized that we are making a big push in this space. And healthcare, again, is an industry where there's tons of data available, right? But it's never been used in a proper way. So the things that make Chicago good, the data analysis, the evidence-based management techniques, I think really fit healthcare well. So I'm very excited about this space.
Thank you. I'm going to have combined two questions into one. Is can you comment about the schools? What are the things that the school is doing to encourage students to be more involved in the community service?
Sure.
The second part is, the Booth ranking and history and the price tag, the tuition is definitely is worthwhile for maybe 95% of the people, but some people it's a tremendous burden for probably a lot of people. So what is going on with the scholarship opportunities?
Sure. Yeah, I think that it's a great question. Let me start with the second one, right? The scholarships, I think one of the big things, as I mentioned, is that we have really stepped up our efforts to attract the right students to Chicago, regardless of their ability to sort of pay, right? I think as Dennis, as you noted, the Wall Street Journal has been doing a series of studies on different graduate programs. And they said by far the MBA has the best ROI, right? Of all the degrees they studied, and many of the degrees they studied were very, very poor on ROI. The MBA continues to dominate from that standpoint, particularly if you go to a top institution, right, like Chicago Booth. So I think for the median student or more, I think the investment is very worth it. They make up the money. I think the payback period is even under 3 years, right? So it's a great investment, but we completely get that that's not true for everyone. And that's the reason why we've really stepped up our scholarship efforts. From when I came in as dean to now, we have more than doubled the amount of scholarships we give. I think it's in fact something even significantly over that. And that's been a big change. And the second big change is that we now have partnered with organizations like QuestBridge. So QuestBridge is probably the largest organization that at the undergrad level brings together underrepresented minority students and pairs them with institutions. So we were the first school, I think, along with Stanford, to pair with them to do it for MBA students. So we have a partnership with QuestBridge to bring in QuestBridge students into the MBA program. And so this has been, I think, something that's very successful, and we want to do more. So not just giving merit-based scholarships like we have done, but also need-based scholarships and working with good organizations like QuestBridge to identify those students and bring them. So that's something we're keenly aware of, Dennis, and we are doing a lot. Part of our fundraising has been for the past few years this boundless scholarship notion. A lot of the scholarships that we give are purely out of our expendable money, right, or operating funds. So the more we can put money into endowment to support that, the better that's going to be. So we've been fortunate to get matching gifts. Roxanne Martino, when she was chair of the council, gave a gift. The Wallmans have been very generous in allowing us to use their money to do matching scholarships. So this has been really good. But definitely that's a priority for us. On the earlier question, I would say that civic engagement is something that is a core institutional commitment at the university as a whole, not just at Booth. So we want to sort of draw on our strength as an economic anchor in the south side of Chicago, and try to figure out how can we actually create real sort of lasting change in this area. The Rustandi Center does a fantastic job connecting our students to the local community to explore civic engagement and social impact by doing it on a local level. Just this past week, I think the Rustandi Center had about 25 students who went on a walking tour of Hyde Park and the Woodlawn area south of campus. They went into the community to meet with local entrepreneurs, local leaders. Gian Foreman, who many of you know, Hyde Park native, president and CEO of the, I think it's called the Emerald South Economic Development Collaborative, works with the Obama Foundation on the South Side, and Gian now teaches at Booth, and he's been great at taking our students and connecting them back to the community. We match about 75 students a year to nonprofit boards in Chicago. We also have student groups in the full-time program, Giving Something Back, which many of you may have participated in. They match students with volunteer opportunities in the community and raise money for nonprofits. So I would say our students coming here very much want to be a part of the community and find out ways to give back. And the Rustandi Center does a fantastic job of sort of curating and matching those opportunities.
Can you comment briefly about the profile of the incoming class this year?
Yeah, I think on any absolute sort of metrics, the classes continue to get better in terms of GMATs and GREs. We tend to get a lot of students who have done undergrad in economics or business, but an equal number, more and more, who have done more applied, more technical applied fields like math or applied physics or computer science. One of the reasons that the number of students has grown is not that the program has grown. The full-time program is actually about the same as it's been, but we have increased the number of joint degree students. So we launched the 3-year JD MBA a few years ago, and that's become very successful. So we get about 20 students a year now who are coming straight into the JD MBA. The other thing which has grown, which is now actually the most popular joint degree, is computer science. So we have an MBA and a master's in computer science joint degree, and that's become super popular. So the way I would think about it is we have about 590, 600 students in the full-time program, and then the remaining are all students who are coming straight into the joint degrees. And the reason we count them separately is they're a cohort. So we bring a cohort of students into those degrees, and they have a special, we work out a bilateral agreement with the other school to figure out their tuition and how to allocate and all that stuff. And that's actually made these programs become stronger and grow more fast. So those students end up actually getting, we measure this stuff because we're Chicago, and they actually get better jobs, bigger surplus outside, particularly the CS people at the JD MBAs. But overall caliber in terms of GMAT, GRE, and sort of measuring how diverse is the class, we continue to do really, really well, I would say.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you the final question. It's a bit general. We see the events developing. It's a very different world now. We have war in Europe. We have war in Middle East now. We have a movement of basically de-globalization as opposed to, what we enjoyed the first several decades. We have competition and potential conflict with China. So what is Chicago Booth response to these events as an educational institution? And you touched a bit on this in terms of the normal bias of seeing us as a finance school. So I think it's more about what the school is doing, looking from outside in, to have our students as future leaders in a very, very different world now.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I would say as an overall institution, we continue to believe in being the best global school, right? We're not going to become just the best US school. We want to be global, and that means we want to have the best faculty, regardless of where they're from. We want the best students, regardless of where they're from, and we would like to keep that going, right? We have, I think this year, we were back again to about 40% of our students or so being international, which is sort of where it's been in the past. And they come from all over the world, right? Some of them choose to go back, some choose to stay, but we would like to continue to be the best global school. The conflicts you mentioned, Dennis, they really have a direct impact on our global campuses. For example, we have fewer students in London than we used to because we used to get a lot of students from Eastern Europe, right? We used to get a lot of students from Ukraine, Russia, and that we really don't anymore. And so that's been sort of an issue. And on our Hong Kong campus, during quarantine, we were unable to go and teach there, right? And that had a big impact on the school, but we continue to go forward, right? We really believe in this global model. It's getting harder because the original model was built on students being able to travel easily across countries and travel being less of a friction. And so we have to figure out how do we use online technologies to make it more possible to do these things cheaper, better for the school. And so that's the way we're going to change it. We're not going to change who we are as an institution. We want to be global. We want to be the best globally, but we have to adapt to the conflicts and the changes happening. And so for example, as you know, for a year, we moved from Hong Kong to Singapore during COVID, just so we could continue to operate there. So we want to be flexible and nimble and adapt to circumstances rather than just give up and say, oh, this is too hard. Same in London, right? We could say, oh, we're never going to get that many students anymore. But the question is, well, what if you taught a different product in London? What if we were to offer the one-year master in management in London? Would that be something that would do better there? So I would rather continue to aspire to be global and adapt the school to react to situations as they come up rather than give up on it.
Thank you. Would you like to make a few more comments, and as we're about to end the call?
I just want to say again how grateful I am to all of you for participating today and for just being incredibly helpful and supportive to the school in everything that we do. All the decisions that we make are all about our mission, right? Wanting to be the best academic institution, the best business school in the world, figuring out how to get that going. And the only way we're able to try so many new things, as Dennis said, we've been very successful at a lot of new and innovative things on the academic side as well as the program side. The only reason we're able to do that is because of your help and support and your willingness to allow us to take risks, calculated risks, but nevertheless risks. And just want to express my deep appreciation to all of you for allowing us to do that and for allowing us to continue to try to be the best we can possibly be. So thank you very much. And thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Dean Rajan. Thank you for your time, the thoughts you shared with us, and the updates you gave us. On behalf of the Dean, myself, and all of us at Chicago booth, I want to thank all that participated today for joining us. We know you have many things to do and a lot of priorities. We really appreciate your making Chicago booth as one of the important things in your life. The annual fund team will send out the recording of today's conversation next week. Thanks again for joining. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Dean Rajan.
Thank you. Thanks, Dennis. Bye.